Welcome to Virtualize Everything, where we strive to educate and inform our viewers about virtualization and virtualization technology. Today's video presentation is going to be brought to you via Pimox again. Pimox is a port of Proxmox 7 over to the Raspberry Pi, and we've been doing a few tutorials on just that. The first one we did was installing it. It was wildly successful. Then I spent a good amount of time playing with it and I figured out how to set up a container. That video did pretty good. Then I did another video about the problems I was experiencing trying to get a VM to work. With that, we're here on a Raspberry Pi 8 gig. That's right, we've moved off of the 2 gig that I originally did the first two videos on, and have discovered the reason why Proxmox was not booting the Ubuntu VM correctly and led me to move over to the Arch install that gave me so many problems with the BIOS was due to the fact that I just didn't have enough RAM for that Ubuntu VM to operate at all. So here on the 8 gig, we're actually able to get something working, and that's exciting. So I thought I'd show you how, step by step from the beginning. The first thing we're going to want to do is click Create VM. Then we're going to want to move through this, setting up fairly defaults, because we're then going to have to alter the configuration. Just select Do Not Use Media here, because we're going to have to fix a problem later on with the IDE drivers and their compatibility with the Raspberry Pi ARM setup. So let's just not fill anything out. Click Next, click Next. Let's turn this down to save some memory. 6 gigs should be okay. Now if we click Next, we can see CPU. We're going to want to change the default KVM64 CPU to host. If you don't, it will still operate, but you'll notice a great performance increase by selecting host. We can use 2 gigs of RAM, network is fine, and configuration is fine for now. Press finish, and your Proxmox system will begin creating your VM right here. Now with the VM created, we can select hardware. This is the hardware we've configured, but now we need to make some changes. The first one's going to be BIOS, so highlight it, click Edit, select UEFI. Now, the next one is going to be for display, but we need to add a serial port, and we're going to add serial port 0. Then, under display, we can click Edit and select serial terminal 0. Click OK. Now, let's go ahead and remove this CD-ROM because it uses IDE. Then we can click Add CD-ROM, select SATA, select our storage location, and select our Ubuntu ISO image. Then hit Create. Now, if you have problems booting, we can go to Option, Boot, Edit, and we can move this to the top. The last time I did, it didn't matter. So I'm going to go ahead and run it as the second boot option. If we have problems with it, we'll come back and fix this. Let's start our VM. Select extern.js. And there we go. Ubuntu's running. Now we can begin installing Ubuntu. Now this video is less about actually how to install Ubuntu. I think we all know how to do it as defaults. And more about actually getting the VM set up and working on a Raspberry Pi. So I'm going to move fairly quickly through this part, selecting options and not really explaining what I'm doing. Okay, the one thing we will have to do to stay in serial is select Continue as Basic Mode. Alright, it looks like we've finished installing. Now at this point, we can just press Enter, and the boot process starts. So now we can log in. And just to show you that it is indeed a fully working VM, let's run one command. There you have it. There is a fully working Ubuntu VM on a Raspberry Pi running Proxmox 7. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial on setting up a VM on a Raspberry Pi running Proxmox 7. As always, please consider liking, sharing, subscribing, checking out our merch store, or checking out any of the other links in our description. As always, have a good night.